Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
Then you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
Is it time for another Importance of Being Earnest video?
No, man, I'm just getting caught up on my Oscar Wilde.
Well, that's a good thing, because, Ernest Borgnine's alive again.
What?
Who calls me from out of the pit?
Welcome to the return of the son of the show. I'm Paul.
I'm Mark.
And tonight we're going to talk about the future and past of Doctor Who. But before we do that, happy birthday, buddy.
Oh, thank you.
You might have to stand.
Awesome. Okay, hang on. Don't lose the mic. Take all the pretty paper out. Pretty paper. Oh, don't bring out the paper. Oh, wow. Damn. Where did you get something like that?
Man, I found that the day after we did the Oneiden Line video.
Oh, that's hilarious. I could have had it right on the table. Well, it'll just be on the table from now on anyway.
Yeah, we'll just put it on there for today.
Yes. See, Oneiden would be on the back there scheming, waiting, not taking care of his wife because he ends up, two of them end up dying on him. So he's yelling at this captain friend. Oh, that's awesome.
There you go.
Love it. That's cool.
Would you say you're a Doctor Who fan?
No, not at all. These are just laying around the house.
Okay. Well, I
No.
yeah.
No, of course I am.
I think it's safe to say, I'm a fan. You're more of a fanatic.
Yes.
Okay, because I started watching Doctor Who in about 79, 80 when the bulk of us found it on Channel 11.
Yep, PBS.
And I started with this one. This was my first. I started with the reruns of the Tom Baker era.
And mine was my grandmother and I would watch PBS Sunday nights. And we watched the comedy shows, and then she'd fall asleep, and I'd secretly stay up and watch Doctor Who. And so mine was, they were doing John Pertwee, and so my very first one was Doctor Who and the Sea Devils.
Oh, okay.
So I'd have the Master, and I was hooked. I was hooked from then on.
Well, and since I watched the Baker era, I dabbled in the Next Guy, and then I kind of just faded out. I never really watched Eccleston.
Then when the new show started,
I've seen all the Tennants because my oldest was a huge Doctor Who fan, so I watched the Tennants, and I couldn't really. So I'm kind of a casual fanatic.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
So
you're more of a classic Who fan than you would be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A new Who, as they call it.
The new Who, the modern era,
Modern
as
era.
Atticus told me it was called.
Yes.
Well, without getting into spoilers or anything, I caught a glimpse of the spoiler for the latest Doctor's final episode.
Yeah.
Which got me thinking about like what's going to happen, because then as soon as I tell my son about it, he's telling me all this stuff that's going on
behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about it, and I assume most of our viewers are at least casual Doctor Who fans.
Yeah,
so I thought it was fun to talk about.
Yeah, it reminds me of. I mean, to me, it feels the same way as it did when Nathan Turner took over classic Doctor Who, and we were getting to the end of the Sylvester McCoy run, and he didn't want to. The Nathan Turner was just, I don't know what he didn't like about Doctor Who, but even though he was showrunner, the BBC was getting tired of paying for it, so it just kind of felt like the end, and then it was the end. Then it went away for 20 odd years, and so this kind of feels like we're sort of in the same boat. Is Disney gonna keep it? BBC has said they never intend on stopping Doctor Who, but it could go on hiatus. And the last time it went on hiatus, it was a 20-year gap.
Well,
so that's what people are concerned about. They're like, well, is it? And I think some people have been spoiled by the Disney money. I mean, the show has looked really good.
Well, that 20-year hiatus.
Yeah,
I didn't know that it had happened.
Okay.
And I remember at the time when it was Eccleston, a co-worker of mine, she and I found out she was a big Doctor Who fan, and she was going on and on about it. I'm like, wait, it's still on?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, it wasn't for a while, but now they're back. So, and I would, then I changed jobs and I was working nights, and seldom did I get to watch anything because kids, this was before streaming.
Right.
And so I couldn't really get into it. And then, of course, Tenet comes along and game changes everything.
Yeah, I mean, minus so I stuck with it. I still haven't seen all the McCoy episodes, so I was already done. I was not a big fan of Sylvester McCoy. And so I kind of quit watching it at that time. And it was like, that was older in high school, so I just kind of quit watching TV in general. But so then I did catch, I was excited about when they sold the rights temporarily to an American company who made the Doctor Who movie, which is the 8th Doctor, Paul McGann. And I loved it at the time. I have never seen it since. So I don't know how bad it is. A lot of people say it's horrible, but I remember liking it at the time because it was Doctor Who, and I really liked the look of the Victorian romantic sort of Doctor Who that Paul McGann was. And so I looked forward. I was counting when I heard it was being brought back. I couldn't wait. So I was right there. Premiere on, I think it was BBC America, though I had to watch it on because I didn't have BBC. So yeah, and then I've been pretty steadily watching it ever since, although I took a break, and we can talk about it later. I took a break a few times when I didn't like the direction of the show. And so, but yeah, so no, I've been watching it probably my whole life. Probably, I mean, this is, Doctor Who is I think I've been into it longer than even Star Wars, because I think, I want to say I saw Pertwee when I was really young. And so, and definitely, I didn't get into Star Trek till later in life, so Doctor Who's been the one for me. Doctor Who and Blake 7 were my two sci-fi shows. And so, yeah, so I've been going for a long time. But as far as the future goes right now, a lot of people don't like the direction it's going. A lot of people don't like the choices that have been made. I don't know. And I mean, they're never going to go back to the Tenet numbers. They're never, because that was a different, even as little as 10 years ago, 12 years ago, actually even longer than that, because the 50th anniversary was more than 10 years ago. And that was after. So 15 years ago, TV was a lot smaller, cable was a lot smaller, streaming was Netflix, and that was it.
Yeah.
And so Doctor Who was still back in the day when a TV show could be a phenomenon. And it's just not, everything's so fractured now. It's much more of a niche program. So I don't think Disney knew what it was buying when it bought it. And so, but as far as like, I mean, I don't know, do you want to talk about, we could talk about where it is now. We could talk about where it was.
Well, okay, where it was sounds good now, because our shows are typically retro reviews, stuff like that. So, like, let's talk briefly about maybe favorite eras or favorite episodes from favorite eras.
Mine would be all of. I loved Pertwee. I mean, I always will, because he was my first Doctor. And so, as cheesy as he was, so Doctor Who took on, which is why we can talk about this later. Doctor Who often reflects what's going on elsewhere, and so and a lot of people, say that
science
it doesn't.
Fiction is a metaphor.
I know, isn't that crazy? So Pertwee was the James Bond Doctor Who. When James Bond got popular, Pertwee, he knew Venusian kung fu, and he was an action hero, even though he looked like an old magician. But I loved, and Pertwee was kind of your moralizing figure, but I liked him a lot. And the episodes were all on Earth because he was trapped on Earth by the Time Lords.
By budget.
And by budget, yeah. And so they were able to do a lot more on Earth. And that's when the Master was first popular, when Roger Delgado played the Master. And
when he had the classic look.
Yes, the classic.
Every Marvel villain.
Yes.
Like Baron Mordo.
Okay, yeah, he's definitely Baron Mordo, yeah. So I have a really big soft spot for the Pertwee era. And I don't care. I'm one of those, I don't care about special effects, so it doesn't, that.
And that's the thing, because we grew up classic era, as the kids call it.
Yeah.
And we talk a lot on our various shows about how we don't care about the special effects because we watch guys in rubber suits smash cardboard buildings. Well, Doctor Who also plays into that.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing about classic Doctor Who for me. Like when my oldest got into it, she'd be sitting there on the couch and we'd be watching episodes, and I'd get up and I'd be making dinner in the kitchen, and I could hear the TV. And it's not just because I know the episodes, because some of them I didn't remember because it had been 30 years since I watched them. But you could tell what was going on by what was being said on the show. So it was almost like listening to a radio show.
Yeah.
That's what I really liked about it. And the fact that so we didn't care about the fact that the Cybermen couldn't walk upstairs,
right? And
things were being dragged along on a string, and the green screen was, very limited.
Yeah,
we didn't care, and so that I think that's part of that. That's what I remember most, and that's part of the thing that I love about it is that look.
Yeah, that charm of it. It's just cheesy, and even so, I was watching. So I was limited back in the day by whatever PBS could get a hold of, and typically they just ran Pertwee and Tom Baker endlessly, and so never got to see the second or first Doctor till recently, till actually the past 10 years. And so I'm now going through the whole Hartnell era, so I'm watching all the first Doctor's episodes, and there's the very first, what I consider kind of off-planet, really sci-fi story for the first Doctor. It's these people in bee costumes, so they're wearing bee costumes and they're literally buzzing, and then there's other guys
I saw that
ant costumes.
Yeah,
but you know what, I loved it. I was like, I would have loved this as a kid. And so on a little black and white television, I bet that was scary as hell as a kid.
Well, especially when you're little.
Yeah.
And it's basically what, and I think the British perfected this or invented this, is what they call thinking man's science fiction.
Yeah.
Like the Quatermass stories. They just, they didn't have money for the special effects, so it was a lot of talking and a lot of drama.
Yeah.
And that's what I really liked about the Doctor Who episodes. I mean, admittedly, some of them storylines went on entirely too long, because back in the day they were half-hour episodes, but they were broken up no matter what the story, they were 5 episodes long, and some of them could be summed up in an episode, like Looking at You, Curse of Fang Rock.
Yeah. Well, but they had to do that. That was it reminded me kind of the way serials were shot. And so you get, I'm trying to think, I think it was the green, it's the one where Jo leaves the third Doctor at the end. She becomes a Echo Warrior, because Doctor Who's never been, progressive.
Never been.
So there's a whole episode about, Green and fighting Ecoterras, or being an Ecoterras. And so in that episode, and in some other ones, there's a constant, somebody gets kidnapped, then they rescue them, then they get away for a while, then they get kidnapped by someone else, and then while they're freeing this one, someone else gets caught. And so it's kind of like that, a lot of cliffhanger endings, and they, there's, the people didn't need to be kidnapped that much, but it padded out the episode.
Yeah.
And so, the older ones actually I'm discovering the Hartnell ones are tighter, because they only go maybe 4 or 5 episodes. And so they're only half an hour. And so they're much tighter than they got in sort of the third and fourth Doctor era. So, but yeah, no, I was scared of the Autons when I was a kid, with the mannequins walking around and their hands would drop and they had guns.
Yeah.
Scared the crap out of me as a kid. And I mean, it was you figure I'm like sitting there in the dark by myself, the only one up in the house.
Yeah.
I got the TV on, not as loud, I've sort of got it hidden so I can watch it. So it was perfect. I really got into Tom Baker a lot. I think it's hard to compare doctors sometimes because, like I said, Pertwee's always going to be my doctor because it was who I started with. But Baker clearly is just unstoppable. I mean,
and because it's arguable that Tennant is the doctor. Tennant is the doctor that everybody loves.
Right, and Baker was the doctor back in the day.
But Baker was because, and I think it goes too to like maybe who your first was.
Yeah,
because mine was Baker, of course, and then Tennant comes along, and so I get it. Tennant's great, but Baker was my first.
Right, and he had some of the best. It was Hinchcliffe who was the showrunner back then, and so he did a series of almost horror stories. So really, like, there was a lot of seasons of Baker's era that it was more like a horror show.
Yes, and I loved it.
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, so that was probably the peak.
Yep.
Peak classic Who was those years under Hinchcliffe. It's your Pyramid of Mars. It's your where Sutekh is first introduced.
Yeah.
And
what's the one where like Sarah Jane grabs the one petrified hand and
yep. That one was a great
pretty
one.
creepy.
Yeah. So the Sarah Jane and Tom Baker episodes for me are peak Dr. Classic Who.
Yes.
And I love Sutekh as a kid. The warrior, the mummies from Mars.
Yes. Which
were so creepy as a kid.
Yes.
But what I loved about it was always sci-fi. So it was always, very much science fiction. Now, and it didn't often go as crazy as, say, Star Trek does with the technobabble. But, I think that had a charm, too. The Doctor kind of flew by the seat of his pants. The TARDIS was always messed up.
And it was like the British technobabble, which is bordering on like theoretical.
Right. Yeah, so that was, Baker for me he's one of my favorites. I would put him up there at the top of my favorites. And I think my favorite episodes, minus the nostalgia of, say, like the Sea Devils, would be the Baker episodes. So like if I'm going to rewatch Doctor Who, it's going to be those Tom Baker ones. Now, granted, by the time he changes costumes and we get to the Nathan Turner stories, not so much is he good anymore. And then there was sort of the middle section where they went from horror to sort of adventure sci-fi when Romana joins. So there's Romana 2. When she joins as a fellow Time Lord, and they do the Key of Time maxi series. So that was like the really long storyline. But I love that too. I love the two of them had such good chemistry. Of course, they ended up getting married in real life. Didn't last, but and Romana 1 was great. So, but we go from stuff like the Ribos Experiment, which was really good, but then we get like cheesy episodes where, there's just guys with green stuff on their face.
Yeah,
and, it's all over the place. But the stories were always well written. And they did hire a lot of good sci-fi writers. So, they did.
And you know what it is too? Before I forget, I was trying to say this earlier about the radio play thing. It was like watching a stage play.
Yeah.
Because one, stage plays, as have a very limited budget to what they can put out there.
Right.
And they have to rely heavily on the theatrical performances.
Right.
And so they played out very much like theatrical plays.
Yep. Which, of course, I'm a fan of. So that's going to play. So it fits right in with my whole Maat. And so yeah, it does. And that's what made it interesting. I mean, they did. I remember when, Tom Baker left. Now, I'm not a big fan of, I have a lot of trouble getting into the Fifth Doctor, Peter Davison. Probably one of the Doctors I've watched the least of. I've seen his first episode and I've seen his final episode. The final episode's fantastic, Castrovava, but he was just too. He had a thankless job. How do you follow up Tom Baker?
And so on that note, that's why I didn't watch it, because I was so mad.
Yeah.
I didn't really know so much about the reincarnation thing.
Yeah.
And a regeneration, whatever they call it. And to replace this dude who I loved with this weirdo with a piece of broccoli on his shirt.
Yeah.
I couldn't buy into it.
Yeah, he's too for me, he was always too passive, too mild milquetoast. I just couldn't. I'm going to eventually, because I have access to all the episodes now on streaming. I'm going to watch them eventually. But as of right now, Peter Davidson is one of my least favorite doctors. But he's following Tom Baker. What can you do? And so, ironically enough, then Colin Baker came along, number 6. And I was all excited because as a kid, I thought he was related to Tom Baker. So he had the curly hair. He was a baker. And I'm like, oh, cool. It's like Tom Baker's brother or younger brother. Someone's going to be Doctor Who now. So I was all excited.
Ginger Baker.
Ginger Baker. And the candlestick maker. But so Colin Baker is probably one of the least liked of the doctors because, again, Nathan Turner was running that show into the ground. And so they made the choice to make the doctor unlikable and violent and a little damaged by the regeneration. And that did not go over too well. But as a kid, I thought it was interesting. He was different. He definitely was way more animated than I thought Peter Davidson was. And of course, I was just getting to the age where you start paying attention to certain things as a young man, thinking of spring. And of course, Perry was his companion.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so, she's terrible as an actress now as I look as an adult. But as a child, as a young man, I was like, oh, like it. So, I really got into Colin Baker for a while. But he had some poor writing. Although he did do The Trial of a Time Lord, which I really liked. Master was involved. They introduced the Valyard, which was sort of the evil regeneration of the Doctor, which they never brought back.
I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, so I liked some of his episodes. The Ronnie was first introduced, and her TARDIS I thought was so cool as a kid. Her TARDIS was all like black and angled and dark looking, and so
aggressive.
It was like, it was basically like if Darth Vader had a TARDIS. And so I liked her years as well. And then, like I said, I kind of fell off had the same reaction to Sylvester McCoy. It was the umbrella, the stupid question mark umbrella.
Mark, kids don't care about that era. They want to know about the modern era. Let's talk about the modern era.
Well, even the modern era now is becoming old to them. Because you figure the modern era.
You got to break that era up into like a couple of different eras.
There's the modern, and then now there's what we call the contemporary era, I suppose. So Eccleston comes along, and didn't know, one of those things where you see, I'm trying to think of an analogy. Christopher Eccleston, to me, when you saw pictures of him before the show started, was like when Robert Pattinson was picked to play Batman. You're like, that's not Batman. That's not Doctor Who. Why is Doctor Who?
Right.
The guy. Oh, and I knew who Eccleston was because I had seen him in Jude the Obscure.
Yeah.
The movie Jude the Obscure, and I loved him as an actor, but I just thought, that's not Doctor Who.
Or it's kind of like when you see the cast for Thor: Dark World, and you're like, ew.
Yeah, because he was there too. He should have. Well, that was the script's fault. He could have been great as Malekith, but But by the episode Rose, Eccleston, I think, won everybody over. I mean, he just.
Yeah, I know a lot of hardcore Eccleston fans.
Yeah. And so he won I think I was a fan. I mean, most people, when you talk to him, by the end of that very first RTD episode, Rose, everybody loved Eccleston. And so he just was alien and weird and quirky and funny. And of course, it was, now looking back on it, it looks cheap now. But back then, we were excited because it had a budget, it had special effects. but I mean, but it still sort of had a cheesy charm to it. It didn't have the best special effects, and so. But I fell for it right away. I mean, I ate it up. Like I said, I was there every week for the new episode with Eccleston, and so, and I think that's when Russell T Davies really knew what he was doing. I mean, he was fresh, he was new as a showrunner, and they made some really interesting choices. With I think Dialect is probably the most famous episode out of that season 1, where it shouldn't be spoilers for people now, but there's a time war, and he's the last of the Time Lords, and he finds the last of the Dialects, and so there's a great interaction between him and the Dialect.
Yeah,
and
I've seen a couple of them.
Yeah, that's a really good episode. I thought the Eccleston era. I mean, and granted, again, there were behind the scenes issues, which I just saw it on a video the other day because they were begging him to come back again, and he said they'd have to fire the entire production crew for him to ever come back, and so he was very unhappy. Yeah, very unhappy with the Doctor Who filming, but. I know, like, our friend John Eccleston's his favorite. Of course. And Billie Piper was great. Now, it's funny. I just saw spoilers. Yes, we all know she's the face of the new Doctor Who, perhaps. But they played
what?
They did a history of Billie.
Spoilers.
Yeah, they did a history of her. I had never seen her do anything else but Doctor Who, and I forgot that she was a singer. Oh, wow! I mean, kind of England's Britney Spears, I guess.
England's answer to "the words get stuck in my throat."
Yeah.
Well, I have a prediction.
Okay.
I'm going to save it to the end.
Okay.
So there's no spoilers, but I have predicted the future of Doctor Who.
Okay, good. All right, so we'll get to that. All right. And I know a lot of people hate the romance angle with the companions. But they all, I mean, Sarah Jane and Tom Baker definitely had, the chemistry.
The people that poo-poo the romance angle, and I kind of like the will they won't they, the teacher student thing. I kind of like that whole thing. But the thing is the people that poo-poo it, I would be willing to bet real money that had the BBC allowed it back in the day, it would have kept going because the hints are all, with the exception of like if it was like a little kid,
right? The
hints are all there. Obviously, Sarah Jane has it in for Tom Baker, but they can't really play, and was that unrequited, which is always a great tool to have in your toolbox for writing, So I don't think it's anything new. I just think it's been pushed forward a lot more.
Yeah,
and there can.
Yeah, and I think the show is definitely New Who is definitely different. It's not a serialized. It's not like the old serial style of the old show. It definitely has. You were talking about this earlier today. It definitely has a pace to it, a frenetic pace.
Yeah, frenetic's a good word for it.
And it definitely has that. To me, it reminds me, RTD's Doctor Who is the classic Buffy the Vampire Slayer arcs. So in Buffy, if you watch Buffy, we get the big bad. There's always the big bad in Buffy. And so the whole season goes on. It's crazy. There's a lot of running around.
Yeah.
There's romance. And then there's hints that there's something bigger coming, and at the end we get the big bad.
Yep.
And so, of course, what do we get in Doctor Who season 1 of the new series? We get Big Bad Wolf. So we get Bad Wolf. So it's literally the big bad. And so I think he took a page out of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer handbook for writing scripts and writing seasons, and we'll talk more about that towards the end. But so once you realize that. That pattern, that leaves a little bit off sometimes. So if you're watching, it's just like Shamalama Lama Ding Dong. If you're watching it, there's going to be what's a twist.
There's always going to be a twist.
There's always going to be a twist. So, but
the twist would be as if you made a good movie.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I mean, The Sixth Sense was good, but
after
he had one. Never do it again. Yeah. But with RTD, we get he set it up really well though. Like season 2, it's the Cybermen and the Daleks, or the rise of both. We lose Rose, or I think it's season 2. Yes, season 2. And so I think it kind of sets in like the big overarching villain is like with the third series with Martha, where he's told you are not alone, and then we build up and build up and build up, and then we discover that all along the Master's been there, and so they reveal the Master, which is probably with Derek Jacobi as the Master, and so in Utopia, and that's probably one of my favorite episodes of all time is Utopia.
It's so good.
It's so good. Yeah. Minus and it's an homage to the Time Machine with the Morlocks, but the anti-humans running around. But I liked that. I thought it was kind of a nice cheeky. And I am a fan of the Sims Master when he converts over to John Sim. And so, but that's coming. And so by the time you get to the 4th series, there's they call it's from Lost, the TV show. They call it the mystery box. It's a new way of doing TV shows. So now there's a mystery to solve overall arching for the series. And that kind of became the 4th series with what is Donna? What will you become? But I mean, for me, Tennant, I am an unapologetic Tennant fan. I'm a fanboy for David Tennant, so I watch everything he's in.
I think there's two kinds of people.
Yeah.
I think there's people who love David Tennant, and I think there's people who are lying to themselves.
Yes. Yeah, and give him credit. He was a fan since he was a little kid. He had signed, I think it was Tom Baker signed something of his when he was a kid. He has wanted to be the Doctor since he was a little kid. And so, I mean, there's a lot to say about that, and I think that's why he gets it. That's why he's the Baker of the new Who era. And then for me, I am less of a fan of the Billie Piper stuff. I think Martha was great.
I loved Martha.
I love Martha. She's a criminally well, she never gets her due. But that's okay. That was the story. Like we just did the romance. We can't do another romance, so let's do the unrequited romance. And so but my favorite is Donna. I love me some Donna.
Well, that was going to be my my final question for the episode.
Yeah.
You already answered.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, it's fine.
Sarah Jane and Donna would be my two favorite.
My thing is, you never forget your first. My heart belongs to Sarah Jane Smith, but Donna is the GOAT.
Yeah.
She's the best.
He is the best. And unfortunately...
You can fight us in the comments if you're wrong.
Oh, yeah. Definitely, for sure. Yeah, Sarah Jane, I think... Now, Joe Grant, again, for me, nostalgia-wise, Joe Grant has a place in my heart because she was my first companion. But yeah, Sarah Jane is my favorite. Probably at the top, and then Donna comes next.
So Eccleston comes along. Eccleston starts the thing I like to think of as running.
Yes, run. Yes, in the very first episode.
Yes. And then Tennant comes along, and he keeps that pace going. But for me, the stories got better.
Yeah.
Because I've gone back and I've watched a handful of Eccleston stuff. The stories got better. And then Matt Smith comes along, keeps the running, but then the stories get really, really like this. Like all the interpersonal relationship and that.
There's a difference between, so when you get Matt Smith, who I would argue has the best, all right, let's say best New Who. The best New Who first episode, I think, goes to Matt Smith.
That's a good episode.
The 11th hour, I think, is like perfect peak Doctor Who. Yeah. Just firing on all cylinders, that episode. And, but that's when Stephen Moffat took over, and who's a brilliant story writer. I mean, he wrote Blink, he wrote, The Unquiet Child. He did all the. When you think of your favorite episodes of New Who, it's typically a Moffat story. When he became showrunner, he wanted to get away from sort of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer model, and he really wanted to get into what is time. He takes timey-wimey to a new level, and so his plots are very intricate, and that's hard to follow on a serialized weekly basis. So he was for me, he's like the Lost of his plots are so complicated, and his overarching storylines are so complex, and they don't pay off just because it's the season finale. It doesn't mean everything's going to pay off. It might pay off a season later. And so he's kind of hard to follow. I love Matt Smith. I'm just not a fan of all the stories, I think. But every Doctor has crappy stories. It's not, I mean, even Tennant, for God's sakes, there's lots of bad episodes. But for me, like by the time they get to series 7, with Matt Smith, I think it's his second season, or third, it got really bad for a while. And then he sort of, to me, he came into his own with the Day of the Doctor. But yeah, it got really, really complicated. Yeah. Too complicated, I think. Yeah.
I did like the one joke where what's her name? What's the curly haired female companion or Time Lord or whatever the hell she is? She's got ER.
That's River Song or Alex Kingston.
Yeah. I did like the joke where it turns out he had the parking brake on the whole time.
Yes.
I made that noise.
Yes.
I thought, but then to me that kind of turned into like he kind of got a little like Doctor Who's an idiot kind of a thing, which a lot of shows do that kind of thing.
Well, and Matt Smith sort of is, he's sort of bonkers, and so sometimes he is quote unquote an idiot. In fact, I think they call him an idiot in a couple episodes, and so that's part of his charm, I think. But so no, River Song, I think I loved her, but she, like everything else, got tired, and that's, I think Moffat runs things into the ground. So there's only so many times I can see the Weeping Angels. They lost that's the law of diminishing returns. Every time they came back, less and less scary, less and less interesting. For me, River Song became less and less interesting the more she came on the show.
One of my favorite cosplays I ever saw, these two girls, one of them was dressed like Matt Smith and had this harness under her jacket, and the girl behind her was on like a trolley, and she was like as the Weeping Angel the whole time, and just standing perfectly still, just following this girl around. I thought that was pretty good to see it, like off in the distance, like just moving across the aisles of the conventions was pretty cool. But after Matt Smith, like I lost track, honestly. I was done.
I stayed with it, but there was a season or two that I was hate watching. And so I really dislike Clara a lot. I love Clara the Dialect. I love Clara the Victorian babysitter. But Clara the Impossible Girl, there's the Impossible Girl storyline I can't stand, except for because I feel like all it was for was to set up the reveal that John Hurt was the secret doctor. And so I kind of feel like that there was a lot of trouble to go to show there's a hidden doctor we didn't know about. Yeah. And so, and granted, it pays off. It pays off because that he and the Day of the Doctor is. This for me is, if I watch New Who over again, it's either Utopia or the Day of the Doctor.
It is a good episode. Yeah, I have seen.
Yeah, and so the only thing I don't like about it is, and I'll hate it forever, is one line in the story. And I remember being on a Who Facebook group, and I was talking to someone from France, and we were both agreeing about it. The fact that Clara sort of poo-poos the other doctors, like, well, any idiot can be a hero, and don't be a warrior, be a doctor. And I'm like, well, they're all the doctor, you dummy. And so I hate that line.
Yeah, I know you do, because I've watched it.
And so Clara to me is just the worst. And so I didn't really like Doctor Who a lot until she finally was gone. And so it took me, and that's why I didn't really like the 12th Doctor's era till she left, because I was just really tired of her. There's even the episode where she's the doctor, and they even changed the intro. Then we get the whole the episodes with the character Me, who's the Maisie, what's her name from Game of Thrones, and she's eternal. And just a lot of garbage that I hated. And then finally, when he jettisoned all that baggage The 12th Doctor he had his final year for me was fantastic. He got Matt Lucas as a companion, Nardole, and he got Bill. And Bill was a person he picked up, I think, from the 80s. And so Bill's story, I think, was great. And we get John Sims' master back, but this time he's lost the beating of the drums in his head because he no longer has that, because he gets rid of it at the end of the season 3 finale.
Right.
And so he comes back as a classic Delgado master. And so that's great. And so, yeah, so 12 was great. That final season for me I loved it. And then it went off the rails again with 13. Nothing against Jodie Whittaker. I think she's a great actress. Loved her in Broadchurch. She, I think, is the Doctor. But she just, everyone's, I mean, if you want to watch why people hate the Whittaker era, there's tons of videos out there.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about it.
Yeah,
there's certain people who take it the wrong way.
Correct.
And then there's certain people who think we agree with them and take it the wrong way.
Right. No, she just simply, and I agree with the crowd that says she's a great Doctor who just had a bunch of bad stories, which the same thing with in fact, I'm thinking about it. I know with Colin Baker, everyone was like, he had bad stories. The 7th Doctor had a lot of bad stories. Then they shine when they put him on the Big Finish audiobooks. So everyone's looking forward to Jodie Whittaker's audiobooks. They're like, well, maybe other people will finally give her some really good scripts.
Yeah.
And then we have She Leaves. The show is taking a hit. I'm not going to go into the revamping of Doctor Who's whole history because that's a whole other.
We're not about that.
Yeah, and then we get Ncuti Gatwa and the Return of RTD, which we're kind of back to where we were at the beginning of the episode. Loved the return of David Tennant as the 14th Doctor. Thought it was clever.
Yeah,
but what's happened for me with the Ncuti Gatwa era is RTD's running out of ideas and he's recycling stuff. And I don't like, I'm not a fan of, somebody said the other day, I saw, why can't we just have a bad guy in a mask like we did in the old show? Why does it have to be a giant computer generated monster? So you take Sutek, who is this just gloriously looking, black helmed Egyptian looking god, and they turn him into a giant dog.
Yeah.
And then we get Omega, who had the coolest helmet, I thought, when I was a kid, and now he's a big skeleton thing. And so
because Disney money, that's why.
Yeah, and that's what's gone wrong, I think, is now they've got too much money for special effects. They don't know what to do with it. And so we're losing the story to the special effects. And so that's why I'm not. I thought Ncuti Gatwa was great.
I did see the Time Hotel episode.
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun. That was so episode. British, it was crazy.
Yeah, and I think we need to go back to science. And so right now, it is a fantasy show. They did this season about magic and these gods.
Yeah, that's kind of what did it in for me.
Yeah, it's not a science fiction show anymore. It's a science fantasy show, and so I'm hoping somebody brings it back to science. But
speaking of bringing things back,
yes,
shall we talk about what all the kids at home are waiting for us to talk about?
Sure.
The hook at the end of this last episode.
Yeah.
So Doctor Who regenerates.
Yep.
And lo and behold, who does he supposedly regenerate into?
Appears to either be, it's one of three. It's either the new version of Doctor Who has a familiar face, which has been done many times before. Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor. They did a whole storyline about why he had that face, because he was in a previous episode of Tenants. And so we get the 14th Doctor coming back with a familiar face, and now we have a new Doctor with a familiar face. Or it's Rose, somehow. Or it's Bad Wolf, because she did play Bad Wolf in this.
Right. Well, we talked about how there's all kinds of speculation as to whether or not the show is coming back. Right. Who's going to have the show? BBC isn't going to give it up. Even though they probably don't want to do anything with it, Disney's famous for not giving shit up.
Right.
So it's in flux right now. The future of the Doctor is in flux. I think it's safe to say.
Yeah.
Something's going to happen. We just don't know when and how and why.
Right.
So my question is, normally with a modern era Doctor Who, you have the season ends about now,
Right.
and then it kicks off again around the holiday season. Because Christmas is big over there.
Yeah.
Christmas over there is better than Christmas here. Anyway, so my theory is, I have a theory. My theory is, we see at the end that it's Rose.
Yeah.
All right, but she's not done, changing, and then she steps into the TARDIS and she's looking around and she's like, I forget what she says, but I don't think she's done changing.
Okay.
I think she's gonna then change into, for the Christmas special, she's then going to change into Martha Jones.
Oh, okay.
And then eventually she's going to change into Rory.
Okay.
And then Rory's going to be like, finally I get to do something.
Other than save my wife, who loves someone else.
Rory got the shaft.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I liked Rory a lot.
Yeah. Well, Rory was one of the reasons why I liked the actor that played him.
Yeah.
I forget what his name is, but he plays Rip Hunter on Legends of Tomorrow.
Okay.
Now that series went downhill fast, but season 1 of Legends of Tomorrow, I'll fight anybody verbally.
Yep.
Season 1 of Legends of Tomorrow is awesome, and he was great in it.
And I for me, the future, I'm not worried, because even let's say it goes away, it's gonna come back.
Yeah.
And maybe
went away for how many years?
Yeah, and so it'll relaunch again when someone comes along with a fresh idea and they throw money at it.
Yeah.
And so it's not. These things cycle. All of our culture cycles like that. So we'll eventually get, we'll probably be long dead by then, but eventually there'll be someone will reimagine the Luke Skywalker Star Wars movie, and it'll be, you know what I mean? It'll
That's what we need is more Luke. More
well,
Skywalker
I know, but I'm just saying eventually it will happen.
I think we could probably wrap this up.
Yeah, we could talk about Doctor Who.
Yeah, we could.
Let us know if you want to.
Yeah.
Is there a topic of Doctor Who you'd want us to cover?
Yeah, I'm open for just about anything. So yeah, let us know down below if there's a something in the Who verse that you want us to talk about.
Yeah.
But in the meantime,
don't hate too much though in the comments. Whovians can be really negative fans.
Oh, I know.
Don't hate too much.
I do respond to as many of them as I can, but I let the garbage take itself out. So if you leave a stupid comment, everybody's going to see it. But on that note, I'm Paul.
I'm Mark.
And this has been the return of the son of the show.
Doctor Who edition.
Do the 5 count.
Right. So 5, 4.
Not out loud.